Hello, my name is Angelica Sandry, and today we are going to be talking about occupational therapy history, philosophical base, theory, and sociopolitical climate. First up, we're going to talk about occupational therapy history. Talking about history is important in meeting today's society's current needs because it has allowed us to learn and grow from past experiences. It is also important in meeting society's future needs because it will allow us to continue to further the practice and meet future society's needs. History has influenced practice in many ways, including in 1844, the American Journal of Insanity was published, and in 1930, the American Journal of Occupational Therapy was created. These two dates are important because they allowed information to be spread about occupational therapy in the mental health field. History can also influence practice because it allows specialized knowledge and skills in mental health promotion, prevention, and intervention in occupational therapy practice. And here are some other important dates that I listed in the PowerPoint regarding occupational therapy history and mental health. First up, we have 1793, the idea of moral treatment. Next up, we have 1843, the New York City Lunatic Asylum was created. And over on the right, you can see pictures of the asylum then versus now. Now it is luxury apartments ranging from studio to 3-bedroom. Next up, we have in 1854, the Indigent Insane Bill was passed. This was the first bill written regarding mentally ill patients. Next up, in 1906, the first mental illness class was taught. And then in 1950, mental health medications were created. And in 2012, we have the Occupational Therapy Mental Health Act. These are just a few dates in occupational therapy history that I wanted to point out. Just how long it takes for just the idea of mental health being important and treating people humanely in 1793 all the way to 2012, treating people with mental illness with respect and dignity turns into legislation. Next up, we're going to talk about occupational therapy philosophy. A couple more important dates that I wanted to point out include in 1793, again, the idea of moral treatment was created. Then in 1925, the principles of OT emerged. And then over to the right, I have the 9 cardinal principles of occupational therapy. And the picture above is a picture of Felipe Pinel. He is the creator of the idea of moral treatment. And then in 1990, we have the Americans with Disabilities Act. Talking about occupational therapy philosophy is important in meeting society's current needs because it involves treating people with respect and providing optimal care to clients. It is also important in meeting society's future needs because it allows us to be flexible in adopting changing societal needs. Philosophy has influenced practice in the respect that, again, in 1925, the principles of OT emerged, and it allows us to provide better care and understanding of our clients. And philosophy influences practice because it allows us to treat patients with respect and dignity. And I also wanted to talk about people first language. So people first language is putting the person before their mental illness. For example, you wouldn't say you wouldn't say the autistic person, you would say the person with autism. All right. Next up, we're going to talk about occupational therapy theory in mental health. So occupational therapy theory are conceptual models and frames of reference that provide occupational therapists with the framework and clinical reasoning necessary to guide treatment. So a couple examples of models of practice include MOHO, which was created in 1985. We also have the person, environment, occupation, performance, the Canadian model of occupational performance, and occupational adaptation. It is important, occupational therapy theory is important in meeting society's current standards because it helps OT practitioners decide the best course of treatment regarding a client. It is also important in meeting society's future needs because it allows opportunity to grow and expand on current ideas. Theory influences practice because it sets models and frames of reference for OT practitioners to use. Theory has influenced practice by it gives us ideas to build off of, and also in 1985, it can create a standard like MOHO. All right, and finally, we're going to talk about sociopolitical issues in mental health. And the two that I have listed are financial barriers and accessibility. So about 47% of respondents with a mood, anxiety, or substance use disorder said they thought they needed mental health care but couldn't afford to get help. And I also wanted to bring this up because in America, we don't have free health care. Like, everything comes at a cost, and some people just simply cannot afford to pay to get the mental health treatment that they need. And next up, I wanted to talk about accessibility. So in rural and low-income communities, there can be a significant shortage of mental health providers and services. So you may want to seek treatment, but there's just simply nobody there. Other factors that limit access include the lack of transportation, social stigma, insufficient information, and inadequate bandwidth and internet. And up to 80% of clinically stable patients can be treated through teleconsultation as their only point of contact. So this also expands on the idea of the expansion of telehealth. Through telehealth, we can provide so many more opportunities for people to seek treatment for their mental health. Okay, now we're going to talk about personal and corporate occupational therapy and theory. Personal occupational therapy philosophy impacts the way one responds to meeting society's current needs and practice. It allows you to bring your own thoughts and ideas to the table And it allows you to bring in your own perspective of how you think people should be treated. So personal OT philosophy can impact future occupational needs and influence practice by it helps us to enhance our ability to solve problems and make better decisions by developing critical thinking skills. Corporate OT philosophy impacts the way one responds to meeting society's occupational needs and practice by setting standards for the philosophy of the practice. So, like the where you're working as a whole, they have specific standards for people to oblige by. Corporate OT philosophy can impact future occupational needs and influence the practice by creating a group mindset that is harder to change and adapt to current societal needs. So personally, you can change your mindset a lot easier than changing a whole corporation or practice. Corporate OT theory impacts the way one responds to meeting society's current needs and practice by creating a standard of plan for clients. So there may be, so as a corporation, they probably just use PEOP or MOHO. That's the standard of theory that they have for their organization. Corporate OT theory can impact the way one responds to meeting society's future occupational needs and how it influences practice by having current standards of practice to use in the practice, and it can impact the care of a client. Okay, now let's talk about the collage that I have created. So for the collage, I wanted to depict images of altruism, freedom, dignity, well-being, health promotion and wellness, remediation or restoration, and compensation/adaptation. And I also wanted to talk about dignity. Here I have dignity stands for deepen understanding, identify and satisfy needs, give from your heart, never patronize, imagine your reality, tear down barriers, and yearn to collaborate. And this whole collage just gives a general idea of my personal OT philosophy. All right, so today we talked about occupational therapy history, philosophy, and theory, and how they have had an influence over the years to further the profession. And with the ever-changing sociopolitical climate, occupational therapy practitioners need to adapt while maintaining the principles and values occupational therapy was built on. Okay, and here are my references.